We humans are just natural born storytellers, right? It's how we make sense of the world of our lives. But have you ever stopped and wondered, how could we actually study those stories? I mean, with real scientific rigor. How do you take someone's personal lived experience and turn it into powerful, meaningful data? So that's really the big question we're diving into. See, sometimes your goal isn't to make broad generalizations about a huge population. Sometimes you want to go deep. You want to understand the incredibly rich, complex, and unique experience of just one individual. And for that, well, you're going to need a very special set of tools. All right, let's get into it. And boom, here's exactly where that tool fits in. You're looking at a map of different research methods here. And if your main goal is, and I'm quoting, to tell stories of individual experiences, then narrative research is your go-to. It is specifically designed for that very purpose, exploring the life of an individual. Okay, so what is narrative research really? I mean, what's the deal here? It is so much more than just sitting down for a chat or conducting a simple interview. Think of it as a complete framework, a whole way of understanding how we build our own realities through the stories we tell ourselves and others. So let's get a nice, solid definition on the table. At its heart, narrative research looks at a story as a kind of text, and it doesn't matter if it's spoken out loud or written down. The important part is that it gives a chronologically connected account of events. And that phrase right there, chronologically connected, that is the secret sauce. It's all about how one thing leads to another and another in the arc of someone's life. Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting. Look at these key features. First off, this is not a passive process. It's often super collaborative between the researcher and the person telling their story. It also dives deep into context, because you can't understand a story without understanding the world it happened in, right? And the data, it's not just from interviews. We're talking photos, journals, documents, anything that helps tell the tale. And maybe most importantly, researchers are always listening for those turning points, those critical moments that changed everything. And get this, narrative research isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. It's more like a family of approaches, a whole spectrum of ways to look at stories. Each one has a slightly different focus. Let's take a quick look at some of the most common types. This table lays it out for us perfectly. For instance, you've got a biographical study. That's pretty straightforward. It's when a researcher writes about someone else's life. But then there's autoethnography, which is so cool. That's when the person writes their own story, but specifically connects it to broader cultural meanings. A life history is the whole shebang, trying to portray someone's entire life. And an oral history tends to be more focused, zooming in on personal memories about a specific event or time period. All right, so we get the different kinds of stories you can explore. But now for the big question. How do researchers actually do this stuff? How do they go about capturing a life story? What does that process even look like? So, the first thing you have to do is just forget about any kind of rigid, linear checklist. It doesn't work that way. As you can see here, the process is a fluid cycle. It's this organic, back-and-forth process of collaboration and interpretation. It's a journey of discovery, not just a series of boxes to tick. But we can break that fluid cycle down into a few key phases. First, you select and gather. You find the individual and collect their stories from all those different sources. Then, and this is crucial, you embed context. You have to situate their experiences in their personal, cultural, and historical world. The next step is where the real art comes in. You analyze and re-story, which we'll get to in just a second. And finally, you collaborate and present, working with the participant to make sure the final story is accurate and respectful. Okay, let's zoom in on that third step, because it's a big one. This idea of restoring is absolutely central to narrative research, so it really deserves its own focus. This is where raw memory gets shaped into true meaning. So here's the thing. People don't usually tell their life stories in perfect chronological order. I mean, who does, right? Memories are messy. Restoring is the researcher's job of taking all those scattered accounts and memories and carefully reorganizing them. It's like being a detective and an editor at the same time. You look for key elements like plot and place, and you rewrite it all into a chronological story that makes sense. And this quote, wow, it just nails it. It's from two of the pioneers in this field, Clendenin and Connolly. Narrative inquiry is stories lived and told. Just think about that for a second. There's the lived part, the actual raw experience. And then there's the told part, the act of sharing it, of putting it into words. Narrative research lives right there, in that fascinating, complicated space between the two. Of course, when you're dealing with the very fabric of someone's life, you're going to run into some profound challenges. And you have some immense responsibilities. This isn't just about collecting data anymore. This is about a human being's identity. This work is just an incredibly delicate balancing act. On one side of the scale, you have the researcher. They have the training, their own background, and a lot of power to shape how the story is told. And on the other side, you have the participant and the raw, complex truth of their life. The huge ethical challenge here is keeping those scales balanced, making absolutely sure the participant's voice is respected and remains central to the story. Which really just leaves us with this final, powerful, and honestly very difficult question. Once a story is told, researched, and restoried, who owns it? The person who lived it, or the person who wrote it all down? There is no easy answer to that, and that very question sits at the heart of both the promise and the peril of turning a life into a narrative.